Hey everybody, welcome back. Brian Cain here. And what we're talking about today is this concept of having performance awareness and recognizing where you're at. Recognizing where you're at physically, recognizing where you're at emotionally, recognizing where you're at in the context of your environment. And once you recognize that, having the ability to release if you're in a bad place, but really refocus on what's next, that next 200 feet, that next pitch. What we're going to discuss today is kind of an adaptation of something that was featured in the book Heads Up Baseball, which we've mentioned numerous times. I can't recommend to you enough that you pick up that book and check it out, by Ken Ravizza and Tom Hansen. So remember our 3 rules. You have to be in control of yourself before you can control your performance. You have very little control of what goes on around you, but total control of how you choose to respond to it. And 3, what you're aware of you can control, what you're unaware of is going to control you. So if all of a sudden your performance starts to go south and you're not doing well, do you recognize that? And then what do you have to go to turn it around? And what you have to go to, as we talked about in the relaxation recovery unit, is the breath. But how do we identify when we're getting out of control? That's ATW. That's awareness to win. Because every athlete loses it. Every athlete gets out of control. It's the athlete that can get it back most quickly who's going to perform consistently and have more success. So if we look at this image here of a traffic light with a spiral, comes right out of Heads Up Baseball. And if you were driving a car and you came to a green light, obviously you would go. If you were driving a car and came to a yellow light, well, some of us would slow down, some of us would speed up, right? But we check that approaching intersection for traffic, look in the rearview mirror for a cop, and then make our decision if we go or slow. Come to a red light, we got to stop or we're going to crash and burn. Well, you see, it's the same thing in performance. If we look back at the image, notice that when you have green lights, or we're talking about a green light mentality, you're in control. Everything's going good. All of a sudden something happens, you start to spiral out of control. We call that getting into yellow lights. And then when it gets magnified and you're really out of control, that's a red light mentality. So we talk about what puts you in yellow lights. It could be a teammate making an error. It could be an umpire making a bad call. It could be a coach or a fan or a parent or somebody saying something to you. It could be if you're a fighter, it could be some self-doubt when you get inside of the cage, wondering, have I done everything? Or thinking, I can't lose. Remember, focusing on what you're trying to avoid instead of what you're trying to accomplish. And it happens all the time in mixed martial arts where guys train 12 or 15 weeks for a 15-minute fight, and they go in there and they end up fighting not to lose instead of fighting to win. And when you fight not to lose, you get more of what you're focused on. You're going to probably lose. Happens all the time. So we have to first identify what it is that I'm thinking, right? What's my self-talk? How do I feel physically? And what situations or actions put me into what we'll call green lights. So let's focus on green lights first. What are your green light thoughts? When you're playing your best, what are you saying to yourself? And you have this piece of paper in front of you. I'd like you to, if you have to pause this video and give yourself some time to write those down. What are some of the things that you say to yourself when you're playing your best? Some examples could be, you can't touch this fastball. I feel great. I feel strong. I own this gym. This is my house. Some aggressive type of things, but very aggressive, very outward, very confident type of thoughts. What do you say to yourself when you're playing good? I got nasty stuff today. I dare you to hit this fastball. Whatever. How do you feel? Well, usually you feel light on your feet. You feel like you have some energy. You feel strong. You feel big body language. And then what situations or actions in games or practice or weight room or whatever environment you choose puts you into those green lights? It could be, I have a great warm-up. I have a good round of batting practice. I'm feeling prepared because I've practiced my presentation that I have to deliver numerous times and I know my content forward and backwards. So what are those situations and actions that give you green lights? Now, let's talk about red and yellow lights. You see, I've had some coaches I've worked with that have gotten kind of caught up in, well, is that a red light or is it a yellow light? I don't know. I mean, is that a red light or is that a yellow light? I don't know. So they get hung up on that instead of thinking the way I want you to think, which is as long as you're not in green, it doesn't matter if you're red or yellow, you're not in green. So you got to do something to get yourself back. So how do we identify if we're in yellow or red lights? Well, let's put those together, because as long as you're not in green, you're in a bad spot. Well, we got to get back to our own happy place if you're a Happy Gilmore fan. So when you have self-talk, when you have yellow lights, red lights, what type of things do you say to yourself? I can't believe that umpire made that call. I feel tired. Why is coach saying that? Why is someone in the bullpen warming up? Or, I suck. I can't even see the ball. I can't hit. I don't feel good. Whatever the self-talk is. How do you feel? Sometimes you feel like you can't catch your breath. You got that cotton mouth. The bat feels like it's twice as heavy as it should be. The ball feels like a bowling ball. You know, how do you feel physically? You feel slow. You feel lethargic. You feel tired. You feel like the game is speeding up on you. Is a lot of times what I hear from athletes. And then what situations or actions will put you in yellow lights or red lights? We've talked about a couple. Could be an error of a teammate, could be an umpire's bad call, could be you make a pitch or execute something the right way, it doesn't go your way. You do your nails presentation and then they, well, thank you, we're moving on somewhere else. And they're just not into what you're talking about. So once you've identified, okay, here's what I'm saying, here's what I'm feeling, here's what situations put me in green lights, and here's what thoughts, feelings, and situations, or thoughts, feelings, and actions put me in yellow lights or red lights. Once you've written those down and you look at the two of them, now you have an understanding of, okay, green lights, this is when I'm at my best. Yellow lights, red lights, this is when I'm at less than my best. I identify these two things. Now that once I've identified them and I can recognize when I get into a yellow light or a red light, now I have to have some type of release. Remember we talked about flush the toilet, release your mental brick. Something I can do to get me back to green. So examples of releases, you have to be creative with your sport. It could be finding a focal point. So for example, if there's a sign at your facility and you catch yourself in yellow lights or red lights, you go to that sign, good deep breath, pull your chest out, get big. You put all that negative energy and the self-doubt and the yellow lights and red lights into that sign. And then you remind yourself, get right back to what's important now, and you get back into green lights. If you're a pitcher, it could be just taking your foot, wiping it off the rubber, cleaning the rubber slate, right? Cleaning the rubber, meaning I got a new slate, new rubber, it's clean, I'm ready to pitch. Batter's box, I get rid of some footprints, get rid of those footprints. There goes that last pitch, I'm on and I'm playing the next one. So whatever your sport is, you could untuck your shirt, tuck it back in. You could make a fist, let it go. You could clap your hands and move on. You could spit. You could do whatever you want. As long as that is what you identify as my release, and I use that when I get going out of control, speeding up a little bit, yellow lights or red lights, I release, and that brings me back to green lights, and I refocus on what I'm doing now. So there's this cycle of every time, every situation, every pitch, every play, every shift, it's recognize where I'm at. If I got green lights, refocus on the next play. If I recognize where I'm at, I got yellow lights or red lights, I have to go through my release ritual and then refocus on the next play. So it's pretty simple in concept, but again, simple and easy are not synonymous. But if you want to be a great performer and you want to perform consistently, you have got to learn to recognize and have ATW of your signal lights. Stay in green lights because we know green means go, and then when you get in yellow and red, release those mental bricks and refocus on what's important now. The last chart I'll show you here, as you can see, when you have green lights, you have about a 90% chance of playing at your best. You have yellow lights, you got about a 60% chance of playing at your best. And if you're in red, you're about 15% chance of playing at your best. So why do upsets happen? Why is it that the best team never wins? Because usually the team that plays in green lights is the team that gives himself that best chance for success. So your challenge this season is to see how often and how many people on your team, for as long as you can stay in green lights. And when you have adversity, those bad calls go against you, use the term, so what, next play. So what, next play. So what, next play. Release, refocus, and get back to what's important now. Good show, making time for your R's. You got to work on this every day. Again, it comes right out of Heads Up Baseball. Pick up that book, read it. There's more information in there. We'll be talking to you soon about intelligence and how knowing what to do but not doing what you know makes you no better off than the person who has no idea what to do. And if I lost you there, what I'm talking about is knowledge means nothing. It's all about action. So if you know what your yellow lights are and your red lights are, but you don't take action to release and get back to refocused on what's important now, you're no better off than any athlete who you're competing against who's not making the time investment to get some mental toughness skills. We'll be talking to you soon. Put it in action.